and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. With just a few days left until the August 1st trade deadline, U.S. President Donald Trump announced a trade agreement with Japan, saying Tokyo will invest $550 billion into the United States and pay reciprocal tariffs of 15%. The death toll from the recent torrential rain in South Korea continues to rise. At least 21 people have been killed, while 7 still remain missing, as authorities carry out search and rescue operations for the 5th day. President Lee Jae-myung has now designated 6 areas as special disaster zones, and once again urged officials to focus on helping people affected by the intense downpours. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced that Washington has set a 15% tariff on goods from Japan. As the August 1st deadline looms, the United States will continue to hold talks with trading partners, including South Korea and China. Our Lee Seung-jae starts us off.
U.S. President Donald Trump announced on Tuesday that Washington will impose a 15% tariff on goods from Japan. In a social media post, the U.S. leader touted what he called a massive deal that would also see Japan invest $550 billion into the U.S., adding that the U.S. would receive 90% of the profits. Trump also noted that Japan will open trade to cars and trucks, rice, and certain other agricultural products. Trump also announced on Tuesday that the U.S. will charge a 19% tariff on goods from the Philippines. The figure is a percentage point lower than what was announced in April. The announcement was made in a social media post, with Trump saying that Washington had reached a deal with Manila after holding talks with Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. at the White House. In exchange, the U.S. will see 0 tariffs on goods going to the Southeast Asian nation. Meanwhile, the U.S. has agreed to lower the tariff imposed on Indonesia from 32% to 19%. The U.S. will see virtually no tax on all American goods shipped to Indonesia. The U.S. will also be exempt from most regulations on automobiles, agricultural products, and pharmaceuticals exports to the Southeast Asian nation. According to a senior Trump administration official, Indonesia will reduce tariffs to 0% on over 99% of the products from the U.S. and eliminate all non-tariff barriers. With the U.S. and China still trying to strike a trade deal, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced Tuesday that a 3rd round of trade talks with Beijing is scheduled for next week in Sweden. Speaking to Fox Business, Bessent said that he will be in Stockholm from July 28th to 29th with his Chinese counterparts, adding that they'll be working out what is likely an extension. With Seoul also working to strike a deal with Washington before the August 1st deadline, South Korea's Finance Minister Koo Yoon-chul said Tuesday that he would hold so-called 2+2 high-level trade talks with the U.S. on Friday. Koo said he and Trade Minister Young Han-gu will head to Washington for the talks, involving Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. Without a trade deal, South Korea is set to face 25% tariffs on all goods entering the U.S. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
On the local front, as floodwaters recede, the true toll of last week's extreme weather is coming into focus. While recovery efforts are underway, the search continues for those still missing in the hardest hit areas. Our Moon Hye-ryun has the details.
At least 21 people have died due to the heavy rain that swept across South Korea last week, with fears mounting that the death toll could rise as search and rescue efforts continue. As of Wednesday morning, the number of those missing stands at 7, after 2 bodies were found on Tuesday afternoon in Sancheong, Gyeongsang-namdo province, where 12 people lost their lives. Authorities are continuing to search for 2 more missing people in the area, with a fire department official reporting that while search conditions are improving as water levels recede, efforts are heavily dependent on manual checks as equipment is unable to access certain areas. In Gapyeong, Gyeonggi-do province, search teams involving more than 700 personnel are continuing to look for 4 missing people. Among them are 2 members of a family who went missing after visiting a campsite, 1 person swept away in a vehicle, and another believed to have been caught in strong currents along a riverbank. Search and rescue efforts here are also being prolonged due to rapid water currents. Meanwhile, residents in the area are grappling with the aftermath of the torrential rains and landslides that devastated homes, businesses, and farmlands.
The cowshed was completely flooded. We got a warning from the village center telling us to evacuate, but with the cows here, we couldn't leave. It was heartbreaking.
Many returned to find their properties unrecognizable, buildings reduced to rubble, interiors buried under layers of mud, and entire crops destroyed.
The damage is just overwhelming. The water's been cut off, so there's nothing we can do. There's no electricity, no running water.
As the nation continues to reel from the destruction, rescue crews remain in a race against time, working around the clock to locate the missing and support recovery efforts. 문혜련, Arirang News.
And President Lee Jae-myung has once again urged officials to spare no effort in helping people affected by the recent downpours and designated 6 cities or counties as special disaster zones. Our top office correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports.
The day after returning to his office from a flood-hit area in the south, the president began Tuesday's cabinet meeting by noting the suffering of the people from days of heavy rains and extreme heat.
그 망연자실하게 무너진 집, 떠나간 가족들을 생각하면서 그 아무 표정도 짓지 못하던 그분들, 국정을 책임진 대통령으로서 우리 국민 한 분 한 분이 겪는 그런 삶의 고통에 대해서 좀 더 예민해지도록 노력하겠습니다.
He once again urged his cabinet to spare no effort in helping those affected and searching for the missing, while speeding up the designation of special disaster zones. The first to be designated for state funding were 6 cities or counties, including Gapyeong in Gyeonggi-do Province, Damyeong in Jeollanam-do, and Sancheong in Gyeongsang-nam-do. Special grants of 5.5 billion won, worth nearly $4 million, will be used to help several regions recover, including Gwangju and Gyeongsang-nam-do Province. President Lee Jae-myung went on to urge his cabinet to look for new approaches, which could involve leveraging technologies such as AI.
이번에 장마 폭우를 보면서 기존의 방식과 시설, 장비, 대응책만으로 대응에 한계가 있다는 생각이 좀 들었습니다. 좀 근본적인 대책을 새롭게 구성해 보도록.
This as 9 new cabinet members attended the meeting, including ministers in charge of finance, labor, and safety, signaling the start of a full-fledged new government.
Our economy faces very tough conditions. In the short term, we need to revive the livelihoods of the people and respond to tariff negotiations with the U.S. In the longer term, we should build a real Republic of Korea, real growth.
Another focus was on minimizing industrial accidents, for which the cabinet approved a revised law to disclose to builders if any such accidents occur at construction sites. In clear reflection of daunting tasks ahead, the president asked his new cabinet to be mindful of the work they do, calling them a touchstone for the future that greatly affects the lives of every person in the country. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Following the implementation of real estate loan regulations last month by the Lee Jae-myung administration, the forecast for housing prices has significantly declined. According to data released by the Bank of Korea on Wednesday, the housing price forecast index for July stood at 109, down 11 points from June. While the figure remains higher than the long-term average of 107, it's the largest monthly decline in 3 years. The figure indicates a significant decrease in the proportion of consumers expecting home prices to rise over the next year. Following the announcement of new real estate policy on June 27th, all housing loans in the Greater Seoul area are capped at 600 million won, or $442,000, regardless of income or property price. With just 100 days left until the APEC Summit kicks off on August 31st in South Korea's historic city Gyeongju, eyes are now on whether U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping will attend. For more on what to expect at the summit, we're joined by Professor Andrew Millard, Assistant Professor of International Relations at Changwon National University. Professor Miller, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So the South Korean government has now sent invitations to all APEC member states. So there is a possibility that the leaders of the U.S., China, and Japan could all meet in Gyeongju. So what are your thoughts on this potential gathering?
So you're right. So all the invitations have been sent to the APEC leaders, plus a few others. So there's several non-APEC leaders that will also attend. So, for example, the UAE has shown a lot of interest in attending. In terms of sort of the leadership from China, the US, Japan, in terms of China, at the moment, it's very likely that Xi Jinping will attend. The Chinese authorities are showing a very positive attitude. Of course, China also has its big military parade to mark the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II in September. So maybe it'll be interesting to see if President Lee visits China, and if he doesn't, whether that changes the Chinese stance. In terms of Japan, you would definitely expect the Japanese Prime Minister to attend. Now, right now, in Japan domestically, Prime Minister Ishiba is going through some domestic issues. So whether it's Ishiba or whether it's a new leader potentially in Japan, we'd still expect them to attend. The big question mark does, however, still remain on President Donald Trump. Right now, it's looking like he will attend. So the US ambassador to South Korea, Joseph Yoon, has said that he does expect Trump to attend, but he did also say unless special circumstances mean that Donald Trump cannot attend. So we still have 100 days until the APEC summit. A lot can change. Donald Trump, as we know, can be quite unpredictable. So it's interesting to see that. But for me personally, it would be very interesting to see if Vladimir Putin attends. If he does attend, then really we'll see President Lee's pragmatic diplomacy being put to the test for sure.
Right, we'll have to see how that goes. And what might be some of the key issues on the agenda for discussion among APEC member state leaders?
So there's going to be quite a lot of issues. I think straight off the bat, we can say that trade will be one of those main issues. But the whole theme of this year's APEC summit will be building a sustainable tomorrow. So definitely sustainability will be sort of the main encapsulating theme, but then there'll be three separate sort of pillars. So the first one will be connect. So definitely they'll be looking at issues related to multilateralism, so multinational institutions and organizations and strengthening those. Then there'll also be innovate. So AI and the digital development is also going to be a very big issue that will be discussed. And the last one is prosper. So they want the whole region to start developing. So again, we come back to these issues of trade and so on. But I think there'll be a lot of other issues such as energy security, food security, climate change and such that will also be discussed as well.
Right, a lot of issues to be discussed right there. And this will be the first major diplomatic event hosted by South Korea since President Lee Jae-myung took office. So how would you assess Korea's current diplomatic standing on the global stage? And what are the expectations for Korea's role as host of this year's APEC Summit?
So this is, to be honest, a little bit more of a tricky question because Lee Jae-myung, he's only been president for just over a month and a half now. He's still very early into his term in office. He did attend the G7 summit very quickly after his inauguration. But since then, on the global stage, he's actually been pretty quiet. He did not attend the NATO summit in The Hague. He didn't attend the BRICS summit. So to be honest, I think a lot of the world leaders, a lot of the global stage media will be looking to Korea to really understand a little bit more about President Lee and his vision for Korea and the future coming up. I think, to be honest, most people know about Korea's industries already, so it'll be more the focus on the Lee administration.
I see. And there's also speculation that this could provide an opportunity for a meeting between President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. What's your take on the possibility of inviting North Korea, and how likely is it, and in your opinion, that a high-profile event like this could happen on the sidelines of the APEC Summit?
So again, another very good question. I think a lot of people are waiting for the answer on this one. So North Korea is not a member of APEC, which is why it has not received an official invitation yet. As far as I know, the South Korean government is considering whether to invite North Korea or not. Now, here's where maybe we need to look at it from both the positive and the negative side. So a potential, maybe not disadvantage for South Korea would be if they do invite Kim Jong-un, North Korea, and he does have some sort of meeting with Donald Trump in Panmunjom, for example, will this take away a lot of the attention from South Korea? So the South Korean government, they'll have to weigh up this. Do they want the focus to be on South Korea, or potentially to be drawn away to North Korea? So that could be the potential disadvantage. On the other hand, in terms of the rapprochement, in terms of improving the relations between North and South Korea, this could be a very important step. And it could also be another way to entice President Donald Trump to South Korea by saying, oh, if you come, maybe there could also be a potential meeting with Donald Trump. And we know, with Kim Jong-un, we know Donald Trump does like these sort of photo opportunities, even if it wouldn't be a significant meeting.
Right, a lot of things to consider. All right, Professor Miller, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Korea's Won Yun-jong, Asia's first ever bobsleigh Olympic medalist, is now aiming to make history once again. This time, he's running for a seat on the International Olympic Committee's Athletes Commission to represent athletes from around the world. Our Park Won-woo tells us more.
Legendary Korean bobslayer Won Yun-jong appeared confident and full of anticipation after being named one of the final 11 candidates for membership of the IOC Athletes Commission last month.
Those candidates are role models in their own sports and have significant influence. So it's truly meaningful to be named among them.
If elected in the athletes' vote at the 2026 Winter Games, Won would become Korea's first winter sports athlete to hold a seat on the IOC Athletes Commission. Then he'd be able to act as a bridge between the IOC and athletes to listen to them and make sure they're represented throughout his 8-year term. Won says his own experience as an athlete has shaped how he hopes to serve.
If elected, I want to connect with athletes everywhere and speak with them freely. I've seen athletes struggling when transitioning after retirement. I want to support them through that phase and help address mental health concerns too. I also want to eradicate doping and protect clean athletes.
With climate change threatening the future of winter sports, Won says environmental advocacy should also be part of the job.
Athletes have a big influence on the public. If they take the lead in environmental campaigns, it can raise awareness and help preserve both the planet and winter sports.
But the road won't be easy. Won says he's ready to walk thousands of steps, literally, to meet athletes during the Olympics with sincerity. For the legendary bobsleigh athlete, challenge is nothing new, as it's been the driving force behind every milestone in his journey.
So what does challenge mean to you on a personal level? And as a person, Won Yun-jong, what are your personal goals?
Challenge means growth and change to me. When I tried to become a bobsleigh athlete, it was a challenge, and I made it. I tried to get the medal, and it was a huge challenge for me whole my life. But yeah, I did it. I think there are lots of challenges if I want to get good outcomes. So I believe that I can be a better person through challenges.
No break until the end. With that mindset, Won says he'll keep racing forward just like on the bobsleigh track, toward what could be a new milestone for Korean sports diplomacy. Park Won-woo, Arirang News, Pyeongchang.
Now let's take a look at some stories from around the world with our Cheji. Good morning, Ji.
Good morning, Inzi.
So let's begin in the United States, which has once again decided to withdraw from UNESCO. Tell us more.
Right. The U.S. has announced it will pull out of the United Nations Cultural and Educational Agency, UNESCO, as part of President Donald Trump's efforts to withdraw from international institutions. A White House spokesperson announced on Tuesday, July 22nd, that the withdrawal will take effect in December 2026, adding that the country's continued participation in the agency is not in its national interest. U.S. officials criticized UNESCO's agenda, highlighting its diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives and its 2011 acceptance of Palestine as misaligned with U.S. values. This marks the third U.S. departure following exits in 1984 under the Reagan administration and 2017 under Trump, with the U.S. then rejoining in 2003 and 2023, respectively. U.S. financial contributions currently represent approximately 8% of UNESCO's budget, down from over 20% previously. UNESCO's Director General Ozzy Osbourne expressed deep regret, but emphasized that the agency is prepared both financially and operationally. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan warned on Tuesday that Türkiye will directly intervene to stop any attempt to fragment Syria or allow militants to gain autonomy. Fidan addressed reporters in Ankara at a joint news conference after recent clashes between the Druze and Bedouin groups in the city of Sweda. He also accused Israel of seeking to destabilize Syria and push for separatism in the south. The minister specifically warned Kurdish groups that any moves toward autonomy or independence would be seen as a big strategic catastrophe and a direct threat to Turkey's national security. Following a push by U.S. President Donald Trump, Coca-Cola announced on Tuesday that it will introduce a new version of its flagship product in the U.S. this fall, sweetened with domestic sugarcane. CEO James Quincy confirmed that to align with consumer demand, Coca-Cola will launch a U.S. cane sugar variant this fall, following Trump's appeal for real cane sugar instead of corn syrup. The new product will complement the core recipe rather than replacing the classic formulation. Coca-Cola also reported robust second-quarter profits, beating estimates for quarterly results. The company's comparable revenue beat estimates by increasing 2.5% in the 3 months up to June 27th. In the United Kingdom, Ozzy Osbourne, the legendary frontman of Black Sabbath, known as the Prince of Darkness, died on Tuesday at the age of 76. No immediate cause was given, though he had been battling Parkinson's disease since 2020. His final performance took place only recently on July 5th at Villa Park Stadium in his hometown of Birmingham, with the proceeds donated to organizations such as Parkinson's UK. Over his 5-decade career with Black Sabbath and as a solo artist, Ozzy Osbourne sold more than 100 million records and earned a revered place in rock history. Tributes poured in worldwide, with Elton John calling him a true legend.
Brace for another day of sticky summer heat. Heat wave alerts have expanded to more regions and are active for most of the country. That means tropical nights and scorching daytime temperatures are here to stay, with a chance of showers popping up in inland regions. With all that heat building up during the day, the atmosphere can get a bit unstable. That means we could see some strong, unexpected showers in parts of Gangwon-do, Chungcheongbuk-do, and Gyeongsang-buk-do provinces, with 5 to 30 millimeters in the forecast. And this afternoon, Seoul gets up to 33 degrees Celsius, Daejeon, Gwangju topping out at 35 degrees, Daegu at 36 degrees, and UV rays will be very strong in most parts, so have your sun protection ready. Temperatures are just going to keep climbing throughout this week. Seoul's daytime high could reach scorching 36 degrees Celsius this Friday and Saturday. Meanwhile, Jeju Island is forecast to see rain this weekend. Please stay cool and safe out there.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.